Okay, so this is Heal Hitler. I have wanted to play this game for so long, but I keep putting it off. And so now we are going to play some Heal Hitler because I just want to see what goes on within this game, and I've heard so much about it. So let's give this game a look.
This game was created by one developer and two voice actors. It is a psychology simulator taking place in 1925, before Hitler came to power. It is a game about resolving Hitler's trauma and preventing catastrophe via therapy and psychology. The facts in the game are historically accurate. During the marketing period, people accused the developer of being a Nazi apologist. He's not. He is Czech, and Hitler murdered tens of thousands of his ancestors. This game is an experiment. You are using methods that were available back then. It is a conversational game, and you can finish it in under an hour. In each therapy session, you get 3 to 8 choices that influence the ending. Hitler was a human too, just like you. If you distance yourself from him by dehumanizing him and calling him a monster, you're doing psychological damage to yourself. In order to develop your shadow, you need to realize and admit that given the right life circumstances, you could become someone like Hitler too. You're about good and evil. And if we don't admit that someone like Hitler could come again, we are doomed to repeat history. Enjoy the game.
Alright, so it was in that context that I learned about the game, I heard about it, and someone recommended this game to me a while back. And so this is where I want to get started and to take a look. So we press any key to continue. Where's the any key?
Hello, Mr. Hitler. It is very nice to meet you.
Oh, we definitely do need to be able to hear everything within the game, so hopefully that is being heard, because otherwise I'm going to have to do some really funky things in post, and I am not that good of a video editor, so we're going to try, though.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. Automatic conversation continuation is off. Use C to swish it on if you want. No, I want to be able to talk in between and then come back to it, so that works. Yeah, I think it's good to establish rapport first before you start going into things. And so I'll ask him about his day. Additionally, if I were a psychoanalyst, I think I would want to hear his response to this because I would read into it.
Well, you can lie down on the sofa there. And what brings you into therapy today?
All right. I am trying to identify, so obviously we have Adolf Hitler there. Is that a picture of Carl Jung on the right-hand side? I bet you it is. That looks like Jung on the right. So we've got Hitler over here or not Hitler, we've got Freud over here on the left, Hitler on the couch, and then I think that is Carl Jung.
I just returned from giving a public speech, and my colleagues mentioned that I seem too angry. Once I overheard them talking about me, and they called me an angry little man.
Yeah, you know what? Angry little man is often used as a description of Hitler, so I like that they're pulling from that sort of historical accuracy there. And he gave a lot of angry speeches, and before he came to power, folks were a little bit put off by that.
And do you agree with them?
Okay, I want your opinion.
I don't think so. They lack willpower, so I don't really value what they have to say anyway. They are just minions.
We're in 1925. I'm not certain historically where we are in terms of his development of the Nazi Party.
When they commented on your being angry, do you know what you were talking about during the speech?
About the state of Germany. It was very humiliating for our country to lose the Great War. And now we have to pay reparations, and our army is restricted. Our economy is in shambles. I feel humiliated, and someone is at fault here.
So what I do know is that Hitler fought in the First World War, and if I'm remembering properly, viewed it as some of the better days of his life up until that point. and was very dedicated to his brothers at arms, and was injured twice, I want to say, during the First World War as well.
Well, yes, that must feel humiliating. I noticed you mentioned Germany as your country, but on the telephone, you mentioned that you are Austrian.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that historical detail. Right, but he fought for Germany. I think his father was an Austrian diplomat, but he hated his father, and started having pro-Germany propaganda just to kind of get back at him.
I am, but I refuse to fight for Austria-Hungary. I absolutely hate him, but I would do anything for Germany. There is no better nation.
Oh, are we going to use that to dig into his relationship with his father? I hope so.
Why do you feel that Germany is the best nation?
No. I want to know why he hates Austria-Hungary. Can we please ask about why he hates Austria-Hungary?
It's an idea I got when I was listening to Wagner. I had it for some time, you see, but later I learned it was called Pan-Germanism. I want to unite all the German-speaking people into one nation. We have to get back what is ours. They took it from us in the Great War. It was a horrible loss.
Oh, see, I'm not feeling the insertion of vocabulary there. I don't really think that that's something he would say. I almost want the vocabulary to be kind of on the side, because I think that the psychoanalyst would be aware of pan-Germanism, and so it almost could be the psychoanalysts themselves. It could be their thought bubble on there. Maybe we can get into their own subconscious as well. But I guess just to make sure, right, and this actually makes it kind of an educational game. I want to pay attention to it in that regard as well.
And when did you make the decision to fight for Germany instead of Austria-Hungary?
It was in my adolescence when I thought of this. My father loved Austria-Hungary. He worked in the Austrian civil service and he wanted me to do the same thing. We fought a lot about that. What a horrible drunk he was. I hated him. But at least he taught me not to trust the authorities. Anyway, I enlisted in the Bavarian army and they accepted me. So I was able to slip in through the cracks without a problem. No one noticed.
I think I've heard that his father was physically abusive as well, in addition to being a terrible drunk.
You say you don't trust authorities. But how do you explain that you are an authority yourself? Should the people distrust you because of that?
No, I want to dive into the stuff about his father. Can we please talk about his father?
Distrust me? Of course not. I am reliable and trustworthy. It is the others with the powers that are not, especially in the financial and the education systems.
Why those systems in particular? Oh, good! I can talk about his father now. Yeah, I want to talk about his father, not what the war was like.
Do you want to talk about your father more?
No, I don't even want to think about him right now.
Gosh, dang it! But I want to talk about your father more.
Okay. Can you tell me about your war experience?
Oh, I thought that this would be voiced? Hitler, can you talk to me? Apparently not. What was the war like? Well, I was a messenger. I'm not going to try to affect an accent here, because I don't know it well enough to do so. So I'm going to try to affect sort of his cadence of the voice actor, but I am not going to try an accent. So, well, I was a messenger, so I was pretty safe most of the time. Except for when we were at Verbeek in Belgium, when the British attacked. They used the yellow gas. I could not put on the mask in time. My eyes were burning and I could not see a thing. They took me to this field hospital where the doctor said I was just acting. How dare he? The doctor was nothing but another authority that made me distrust them all. I could not believe this. I was horribly scared, and I felt so helpless. I was never this close to dying before, and the doctor tells me I was just acting. and the horrors I saw at Passchendaele. I hope I pronounced that right. I could not sleep for months. What were the horrors? Oh, we can say we think he's just acting too. Maybe on a different playthrough. On this playthrough, I am going to talk about this, but I don't think that this is what he's struggling with. But these are our options.
I think this experience could be what you are struggling with. It is common among soldiers to experience an exceptional emotional distress that could sometimes lead to temporary blindness. If your nervous system was overloaded, it could have ceased to take any further input. The doctors today are calling it shell shock.
I thought we were supposed to be doing a psychoanalytic approach to this. Shell shock is much more likely to be used by a behaviorist approach or a cognitive approach, but I didn't think that this was something that you saw in psychoanalysts.
That would explain a lot, but I still feel humiliated sometimes. I should not have been that weak. I should have been stronger than that.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of should statements here, right? If I start looking at this like a cognitive therapist, I would start noticing those should statements and how that sort of self-talk can lead to negative outcomes, right? And we would start to discuss those should statements. And we would also start to discuss the emotional reasoning that we're seeing here, where he's saying he feels humiliated and therefore he thinks he's done something humiliating or that other people are looking down upon him. But again, I thought we were taking a psychoanalytic approach where we would dig into the subconscious and start talking about those past traumas and look at how this particular instance might be simply a reflection of the deeper subconscious issue of the conflict with the father. And depending on which psychoanalytic approach we would take, we'd probably be talking about aggressive urges that had been repressed, right? And because he's not actually expressing any sort of aggression towards his father. And so I would think that we would be looking at those defense mechanisms of repression or of, specifically of repression here in this particular case. But there are others, of course, that we could dig into. But I want to see what happens next. Oh, I get to find out what happens next. And so I can either ask about whether this humiliation shows up in other areas of his life, or I can turn our attention back to the war, to the projection that we're seeing. Let's stick with the humiliation for now.
It is normal for people to experience humiliation when having shell shock. Part of what our nervous system does is control emotions. Does this humiliation show up in other areas of your life?
Whoa. I was not implying that shell shock leads to feelings of humiliation. That's not what I wanted to know. But okay, yeah, we can go there if we want to, I suppose.
I don't want to talk about this right now.
Okay, so now again we have an instance of resistance, right? We would in a psychoanalytic approach, we would call this resistance, and the resistance itself is interesting. When you see this sort of resistance to the discussion of a particular topic, that to a psychoanalyst indicates that that's the topic we really need to be talking about. That's the stuff, right? That's the stuff that is telling us what is important and where it is that we should be focusing. So I really, really, really want to see if we stay there or if we agree and leave.
You said that you think that losing the war was somebody's fault?
Again, we're allowing the resistance. We're not pushing back. Okay, so we have another that's not voiced. Well, when I was in prison, I had a lot of time to think about this, and I am positive it was the Jews, the Marxists, and the Bolsheviks. They stabbed us in the back. They are a cancer. They are a deadly virus to the beautiful and the lovely body of Germany, infecting us from the inside. I despise them. Parasites. They disgust me. I wish I could just eliminate them from the surface of the earth. The Jews are involved with the communists in a conspiracy to take over the world. I think that 3/4 of all the communists are Jews. This combination of Jews and Marxists has already been successful in Russia, and now it threatens the rest of Europe. I wonder if this is stuff that they are pulling from Mein Kampf, or from his writings and his letters during his imprisonment, and so I'm not sure if that's where we're at.
You seem very passionate about this. But if I recall correctly, you came here because your colleagues described some of your speeches as being very angry. This could be what your colleagues are referring to. I think you need to be patient about establishing your political program. You won't get very far if you alienate the public. After all, they elect you. And for that, they need to trust you and see you as a responsible leader. If you start talking about eliminating Jews, you won't get anywhere. Maybe you didn't choose the ideal approach here.
Okay, so we're not really pushing back. We're trying to help him be a better Hitler? Is that what we're doing?
What do you suggest, then? It is not just me that thinks this, I hope you know. The German people also think the Jews are to blame. It has been this way since I became the leader of the Workers' Party. I hear the anti-Semitic remarks everywhere I go.
Okay.
You must know how long it took the Prussian generals to prepare for the last war, and that revolutionaries like Mussolini need the will of the people behind them. Slogans, especially ideological ones like anti-Semitism and anti-clericalism, won't bring starving people to the barricades. Why do you and your followers spread hatred toward Jews and papal authority? We can be political opponents, but if you want to lead an entire nation into a better future, we need one another. Bring back the old order of God. How about you write your vision down? It would help you plan for your future.
Wait, is this Jungian therapy and I just don't know what Jung would do? We're not analyzing dreams. We're not delving into the unconscious or the subconscious or the archetypes. Like, we're not doing any of the things I've come to expect from psychoanalysts. And maybe first of all, I'm not a professional psychoanalyst. And maybe this is a neo-Freudian approach, this sort of newer psychoanalysis that you might see. But it really is confusing to me that we're more giving tips on how we might more effectively spread our message rather than digging into the underlying elements of why we feel to spread that message to begin with and sort of what's going on with us. I just don't think we're healing Hitler, is the thing, that he has this underlying trauma and we're not addressing it.
I've already done this while I was in prison. I had plenty of time to write my book, even though I am not so good at the writing. When I am speaking in public, the right word always comes natural to me, but not so much when I am writing.
Yeah, that's because you go on a rant, right? You think it's the right word, but really you're ranting.
Well, that you are already writing your thoughts down is good. Let's use that to identify your main thoughts and feelings during the day. I want you to keep a daily journal of people and situations that trigger an emotional response in you. Maybe other people are seeing these things you are doing as anger. If we journal this, we can have a better understanding of what they see and what you see. Record your feelings, and we will talk about it in the next session.
This is a cognitive behaviorist homework assignment. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, we would talk about the link between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and we would actually have individuals write down times when they experienced emotion. So you would have them notice in themselves when their emotions were changed, and then you'd have them write down the thoughts that they were having during that time period, the things that they were doing, the consequences of those things. And you would also have them write down if they independently could notice when they were having emotionally laden thoughts. You would have them stop and do that as well. But often people have better luck noticing the emotion rather than really monitoring their own thoughts in real time. And so you would start with, when you experience an emotional response, stop, because we notice when we have an emotional response. Stop and write down your thoughts, the emotion, describe the emotion, write down your thoughts, and then write down what you were doing and what either what you're going to do now or what you had intended to do before you stopped, or both. Because then we use the triangle of cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's a triangle that has 3 points. The points are thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And they are bidirectional in nature in terms of their influence on each other. And we use that to start talking about how we can combat. We can't immediately change our own emotions, right? We can't affect that directly. And behaviors we can change a little bit more directly. We can behave as if we felt a particular way, or we can choose to behave in a more functional way. And our thoughts, we can't stop them from coming, but we can learn how to combat them. But that's a cognitive behaviorist approach, not a psychoanalytic approach. It's not the approach of somebody who would have a picture on their wall of Freud and Jung. I'm almost certain that's a picture of Jung. I'm interested in where this is going.
Very well. I will give this a try.
Okay, so he's going to go do his homework.
You didn't tell me about your prison experience yet. What happened?
I was supposed to be executed for my role in the beer hall putsch, but they didn't know I would use the trial as a showcase for my political views. It was free publicity, and I won. I managed to get the sentence down from execution to just 5 years imprisonment, and they let me go after a few months for good behavior. I also read a lot, so it was basically a free education at the state's expense. I read Henry Ford's autobiography, and he made a lot of sense when he talked about the Jews. It is the Jews, after all, who govern the American Stock Exchange, which every year makes the Jews more and more the controlling masters of a nation of 120 million. There is only a single great man, Henry Ford, that still maintains his full independence from them, and they hate him for it.
Okay, a lot more historical exposition here as they're talking about that. Not only that, I think during that trial, going kind of through this and peppering in what I do know about this particular history, I think he also knew the judges, and therefore knew that he could use that as a showcase for the political views, and kind of started winning over the court of public opinion in that way. I didn't know of his connection to Henry Ford, although I'm not surprised. So I'm interested in where this is going as well. Okay, so I can either ask for them to tell me more or end the session. I want more information.
Tell me more about the beer hall putsch.
Yep, tell me stuff. Oh, we're missing the voicing again. Well, I got around 2,500 members of my party together, and we planned to overthrow the local government. The police got involved. Some people died, and I escaped and hid in my press spokesman's house. I couldn't take the loss, you see. I almost attempted suicide. I'm not reading that. It's much better to refer to attempted suicide and died by suicide. I don't like the phrase commit suicide. It's very stigmatizing. But his wife, she talked me out of it, and then I was arrested.
And are you still having suicidal thoughts?
Yeah, the moment that we hear about that, we would delve into suicidal thoughts, and we would do a lethality assessment, make sure that the person is safe.
No, of course not. I was desperate back then. That was a long time ago, you see. And now I have the support of my followers, and they actually listen to me now. I will definitely use the advice you gave me today to adjust my political program.
I am glad to hear that. Well, we are at the end of our time. Why don't we stop here? We will talk in the next session about the other issues you mentioned, but make sure you bring me at least one journal, so we have something to work with.
Okay, so now he leaves. Front end news. He leaves that party. Is the Nationalist Party over? So he's changing his political platform. Is this the end? Press any key. No. Okay, good.
Did you write any journals since we last saw each other?
Actually, no. I didn't find time to do this. But I remember one event from the past when I was in emotional stress, and I am sure of the cause.
Oh, okay, so he didn't do his homework. That's actually not uncommon, especially at the beginning of therapy, that you come back and you see that they didn't do their homework. I didn't notice the dates, though, to see how long between sessions there were, and that was my mistake.
Okay, great. Can you describe the event?
I was on a date with a girl at the cafe. She was around 18 years old, and we were talking about my paintings. You see, I wanted to follow a career as a painter, but they didn't accept me anywhere. So I had to look for other ways to get into the business. And at this cafe, as luck would have it, there was a local gallery owner, this very known guy. Fortunately, I had a few of the paintings in my briefcase, so I had something to show him. But when I showed them to him, he basically told me that my watercolor paintings were not worth anything. This wasn't fair to me. I felt horrible, and I walked away. I tried to talk with the girl about it, but when she tried to comfort me and tell me that my paintings were not so bad, I exploded. My skills were way better than this Jewish gallery owner. He had no idea what he was talking about. I taught myself how to paint when I was 9. And this dumbcough, who had only the formal education, had the nerve to tell me that my paintings were bad?
Okay, so this is, again, something historically that is, I don't know if it's well known or not, but that he tried to get into art school. He was rejected to art school. He actually spent some time, if not homeless, living very poorly, trying to sell watercolor, I think it was watercolor postcards that he was sort of selling on the streets a little bit, trying to survive. There was, I also think there was some conflict with his father surrounding him wanting to be an artist, and his father wanting him to go into, I think, politics, or go into the government, perhaps, or the administration. Okay, so... Okay, so we can either notice the very young girls, or we can talk about wanting to get into art college. All right, so let's talk about that, especially since he emphasized that this is a Jewish gallery owner, and we're seeing that pattern there.
Yes, he was a verdammt Jew.
There it is again.
Can you tell me more about your dream of being a painter?
I always wanted to paint. I started to paint when I was around 9 years old. My mother always supported me, but my father hated my artistic orientation. He wanted me to become a customs agent like him, and he did not allow me to go to the art school like I wanted to. This was a source of massive conflict between us. An office job would be like a prison to me, but in the end it was okay. I learned a lot about National Socialism in the high school, and then I dropped out.
Yeah, he didn't do well in school at all. I didn't know that that's where he learned about National Socialism, but my guess is that's another place to kind of slip in vocabulary. And I wonder if the intent is for individuals to be able to go and read up on this vocabulary between sessions and kind of get a general idea, or even during, while you're playing the game, to go ahead and read up on it. That would be a great way to play the game and to experience the game. Okay, so we can respond to this. Let's see, we can tell me more about the high school years or about your father not supporting him. I really want to talk about your dad.
No, not at all. He was very dogmatic and strict, but my mother always supported everything I did. When my father died, I was free to pursue my dream of becoming a painter. As I said, I applied twice to the academy, and they rejected me both times. And they took my best friend August in. That hurt me even more. I was sure I could make it. I was confident. But they told me I was not good enough. They said I would be a fine architect, but not a painter. Jews, all of them.
Okay, so that ties into a few things. His mother, if I remember properly, kind of babied him, and he was the favorite. That his mother was very attached to him, and he was very attached to his mother. And again, now I want to talk about your attachment to your mother. If I'm thinking like a psychoanalyst, if I'm thinking like a behaviorist, I'm going to look actually at not only those automatic thoughts, but the underlying core beliefs and the underlying schemas that we're seeing in terms of that pattern of feeling humiliated, of not feeling good enough, and really going in and addressing that, and addressing the negative thoughts and emotions that are stemming from that. You've mentioned Jews as the cause of your problems multiple times. First, you mentioned they stabbed Germany in the back in the war, and now they've betrayed you again. Do you see any connection between these events? Of course he sees a connection between these events. He's going to blame them. He's blaming anything on the external, right? And he's always looking for some sort of external cause. He's making what we would call external attribution. Something bad happens, it's got to be something outside of myself. And so he's found a group to make those external attributions and focus on, so that he doesn't have to focus on anything like needing self-improvement. And this very well could be because the person who was trying to get him to engage in self-improvement was an abusive jerk, and the abusive jerk's version of trying to get him to self-improve was, right, quote, improvement is do exactly what I say or else. So the person who was trying to encourage Hitler to change anything about himself was an authoritarian who wasn't doing any good. It wasn't self-improvement. It was just do what I say or else. And then his other parent, his other caregiver, who was his primary caregiver, didn't ever tell him he needed to change anything, that he could do anything he wanted and was perfect just the way he was. There was no one providing guidance to teach you how to look inside and figure out the things that need to change and the things that you can keep the same, and to sort of learn how to take responsibility for your actions, which is one of the things we have to teach children. So I will have to imagine, I'm going to try to predict that he's going to turn around and say, yeah, because the Jews are bad and they keep doing these things.
What do you mean? Jews are part of the economy, they control the finances, they are insidious, they hide like rats, and they manipulate everything. Everybody can see this. It wasn't hard for me to make this observation.
And you did see rampant anti-Semitism at the time as well, in part because, again, especially after World War I, where everybody was looking for a reason, right, a cause for Germany's ills, and unfortunately very often, that, if not always, that cause tends to be a minority group. Okay, so I can either say we already talked about this and talk about your date. This game really wants me to talk about how old his date was, but I want to know more about his mother. Again, I'm trying to be the best psychoanalyst I can here. I really loved my mother. She was the most precious person I've known. I loved her very much. She always provided me with everything I wanted. She gave me my own way whenever possible. She admired my watercolors and drawings, and she supported my artistic ambitions. And so again, this is what I was just saying about his mom, actually, in terms of how he treated him, or how she treated him, even as he got older, right? This is not my kid's 3, and I'm going to tell them how great my paintings are. This is throughout the lifetime.
You talk so much softer about her than you do about other things. Tell me more about her.
Yeah, let's talk more about your mother. I like this.
When she died, this devastated me. It was a pain I have never experienced before or again.
And I think he was an adult when she died. I think that this was, he was older. Maybe it was when he was trying to get into art school, perhaps?
How did she die?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
It was breast cancer. I was 18 years old at the time. Her doctor was a Czech Jew, Dr. Edward Bloch.
Would they have called it breast cancer at the time? They probably would have. We're at the early 1900s now. And of course her doctor was Jewish. Oh, and he was 18 years old, the exact age of his date. I wanna talk about that too. As a psychoanalyst, I wanna discuss that.
So she was someone you loved very much. Do you blame the doctor for her death?
What? No. He was a very kind person, although he was a Jew. He treated my mother free of charge because we had no money at the time. Actually, I sent him a postcard and a painting I made as a thank you. He really was a noble Jew. Some time ago, I found that he said about me that he never saw anyone so devastated with the grief as me in all of his years in the profession.
So now he has engaged in a process of kind of subgrouping this particular Jew, right? Like, so it was this particular instance of kindness, and so he said, listen, all of the Jews are bad, but this one is a special one. This one's different, right? The good Jew. What does he call him? The noble Jew. And probably in part because he said that Hitler was the most aggrieved ever, and right, that it pumps him up and it shows you you've got the most love for your mother of anybody else, and this makes him feel special. It makes him feel validated, and I think that he probably likes this person even more with them saying those sorts of things, right? Let's hear what else he has to say. Or wait, I think it's the therapist's turn to talk.
It seems safe to say that you were very close with your mother and very distant with your father. Could you tell me more about their relationship?
Okay, so now we're going to be talking about their relationship with each other, not our relationship with them. Is that what you're asking, dude? I think so. I bet Hitler's gonna think so.
My mother was 22 years younger than him. When we moved to the new farm, a big part of the money was taken from her inheritance. She liked to be active and was very joyful. She also understood the economics. She would go to the post office and help slaughter the pigs. My father was away very often, you see. And when he returned home, he was mostly drunk. And he was very dominant, I would say. Mother listened to him. She had no choice.
Okay, and so, again, we're noticing, and this is, I bet, why the game is having us focus on the age of his dates. Mother was younger than the father. Father was drunk all the time, away a lot of the time, so he got to spend a lot of time with his mother and not a lot of time with his father. And she is excusing he is excusing her from listening, probably for the same reason, right? That he's an authoritarian, that it wouldn't have been a safe environment to have not listened to and have not obeyed the father, right? So that makes an awful lot of sense, that you would expect to see that sort of thing.
I see. Coming back to the pattern I noticed earlier in your girlfriends, you also tend to date girls much younger than yourself, and as you describe them, they are rather submissive. Do you think you could be unconsciously modeling your relationships after your parents?
Okay, so maybe it is the case that this wanted me to ask about, right, like, I needed to know about his parents before I could ask this particular question, right? So I wonder to myself, and I think this game is good in terms of having replayability in this regard. I do wonder to myself what would have happened if I were to start off asking about his girlfriends rather than waiting to ask about them. And in this case, being forced to ask about them.
I've already explained to you my rationale behind the girlfriends before. I do not mean to repeat myself.
You have? Did I miss something? I would like for you to repeat yourself. I missed it. You didn't.
Okay. I think it is time we end today's session. I will see you next time.
Oh, okay. Okay, so now he's not publishing Mein Kampf. I don't know what I did or what we did to prevent him from publishing Mein Kampf. We explored his relationship with his parents. I'm not sure what this session did that helped in any way. But apparently it did, so cool. And that's the 18th of July, 1925.
All right, Adolf. I think it is finally time we talk about your father. We have made some real progress over these past few months.
Okay, we've jumped to November. We had to have been having sessions with him between July and November, right? That we're just not seeing? Right? Okay, I'm not going to ask him if he feels like talking about him. I'm just going to start asking questions and he can tell me no. Otherwise.
No, I don't think that was it. I don't think it was his job either. He was a very orderly and conscientious person, so he liked the work as a customs officer, but he really hated the bourgeoisie. He was a self-taught genius, like me. I think we talked about him teaching me not to trust the authorities before. He was a very wise man. He knew a lot about a lot of things, and I admired him for this. I respected him, you see, but there was no love between us. I wanted to prove myself to him, but he rejected my accomplishments. He beat me often for the things I did. When I read Karl May once, I found that it was a sign of courage to hide one's pain. I decided that when he beat me next time, I would make no sound. When it happened, I knew my mother was standing anxiously at the door. I counted every stroke out loud. Mother thought I had gone mad when I reported to her with a beaming smile 32 strokes Father gave me. From that day, I never needed to repeat this experiment, for my father never beat me again.
Is this implying that his mother didn't know about the beatings until he had done this? Was it, like, what else? She's anxiously waiting outside. What else would she think was happening? It's interesting that he's talking about sort of with mixed feelings here about his father, that he praises him, but also it talks about the physical abuse as well. But hey, we didn't ask him if he felt like talking about his father, so we finally get his perspective on his father, and right now we're getting the historical information. And so, yeah, I don't care why his father was beating him, I just want to know what made him think the counting the strokes would work.
I just said this. I wanted to look strong in his eyes.
Oh, yeah, you did, didn't you? Sorry about that, Hitler. Again,
And
sorry.
what was this incident about?
That's all I can say. Again, you're telling me that you're repeating yourself, except this time, you were in fact repeating yourself. I don't remember. I think it was a picture I drew. It just seems so odd to be like, yeah, and why was this dude beating you? As if that's important. And I don't think it is.
What made you decide to show him?
I don't know. I was young and I wanted to cause him to smile. I didn't like him. I hated him, even while I was showing it to him, but I still wanted to be the cause of him smiling.
That is not uncommon among children who are abused. Actually, many children who are abused still maintain a love for their parent and kind of have internalized feeling guilty about it. So the fact that that's not being expressed here, and maybe wouldn't have been by Hitler anyway, especially since Hitler doesn't really internalize responsibility for things, and you should never internalize responsibility for being abused. And so that it's a good thing that it's not being expressed here. No one deserves that sort of thing. But you also see then that desire to make the person smile, to quote, be good in order to stop the abuse.
Most children want to please their parents, Adolf. It's healthy.
It's only healthy when their parents aren't abusive, though. Let's be clear here. But we're in 1925, so right, 1925. I'm pretty sure that's the year.
Healthy? I knew what he would do, and I still did it. Are you trying to say this is healthy?
Right? Like, well, why did you know your father would beat you? Oh, because your father didn't want you to be doing art at all. And so you still did it. Well, you still did it then knowing that he wasn't going to smile. You wanted to make him smile, but you knew it wasn't going to make him smile. And so that suggests, again, from a psychoanalytic standpoint, that suggests that there was something deeper. If you knew what he would do and you still did it, then you weren't really looking to make him smile. And that would be something that we would want to dive into, and we would look at the age, the developmental age at that point, and what conflict was being resolved, and look at what was going on in that time period in the subconscious.
The desire, yes. The decision to show him your sketch, consequences known, probably not. So you showed him your sketch, and after that?
He took it away from me. You already know what happened next, so there is little point in repeating this known information.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, but we didn't have a choice point in here in order to avoid talking to you about repeating it, so sorry?
Yes, I do know what happened next, but the point is for you to acknowledge it. You need to say it and process it, even though it is painful.
But he literally just said it.
It was not painful, and there is still no pain for me. It is normal for a father to do these things, hit and scream and yell.
And so this also is something that you often see in abuse victims. You see this thought that this is just what people do, that this is normal. And it can often take a good amount of time to realize that this was wrong and abusive and not the right way to behave. And I bet you what we're going to do is we're going to delve into that and to delve into violence and hitting others and striking out at others not being the appropriate approach. But again, although we could do that in a psychoanalytic fashion, I'm not seeing it here. From my limited knowledge of what psychoanalysis looks like.
Okay. Thank you for working that out loud. You say that's normal for a father.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like that. Well, you say it's normal and yet you still hate him for it? Is it normal for a child to hate their father?
More than anything.
Oh, we just got to say exactly what I just said for once. That's actually good. I want to hear more about this.
Do you hate him because he hurt you?
Yeah, tell me why you hate him.
I don't know why.
Let's delve into it. I want to talk about the why. Right? My inner psychoanalyst wants to talk about the why.
I'm sure you do. You just don't realize it yet. It's still around, just swimming under the water, just where you can't see it. You don't feel hate when you think of him hitting you. Then when do you feel hatred towards him?
There we go. Finally, the unconscious or the subconscious, right? So Freudian theory has divisions of what you have. You have your conscious, and it's typically viewed as an iceberg, right? So you have the stuff that's above the water, and that's the conscious area of the brain, but then, or of reality, but then you have the stuff below the water, and that is the subconscious and the unconscious. And the unconscious area of the brain is the area of the brain that you can't access. It's not just that it's unconscious, right? So you have the preconscious stuff. That's the stuff just below the surface that will eventually come to mind and that you could access if you wanted to, but you're not currently thinking about it. But then you have the unconscious, and the unconscious is the area that you can't willfully pull things out of the unconscious, but the unconscious influences what's going on in your life. So this guy still seems to be trying to delve into the preconscious, right? By asking him, why do you feel this? You know it, right? But you don't realize it. That part is looking into the unconscious and saying there's something down there that you're just not seeing. And in a psychoanalytic approach, you can't see. And that's why we look at symbolism. And that's why we look and try to assess the unconscious in more diverse ways.
Just when I think of him at all, him, my father, that causes hate in me.
So you've associated the hate with the object itself. Later psychoanalytic theories bled into objects relations theory, and those object relation theories started to think of basically anything, right? But people can be objects in this. Just like it's anything that you can have an attitude about. It's anything that you can have an opinion on. And so people, computers, your dog, these are objects in object relation theory, and that we develop feelings that are associated with the object itself. And sometimes it can be associated with a single piece of the object when we're really young, But then as we get older, we associate it with the entire object, and we can understand that the object can have both good and bad features. And so what he's saying here is that when he thinks of the object that is his father at all, that creates an emotion of hate.
All of it? All of the hate?
Yes.
Okay. And so I could either ask how you handle all of that or what you do when you feel that hate. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know what distinction these two questions are trying to get at. So I'm going to go with what you do when you feel all of that hate. What do you mean? Yeah, I know. I don't know what I mean.
When it comes, bubbles up inside you, what action do you take?
Oh, excellent. So we're looking at the bubbling up from the unconscious into the conscious here. And what do you do when that happens?
I have unimaginable things to do. For Germany, for the human race. What time is there for this anger management?
Well, you know, seeing as you go off on rants and you came because your friend said that you were too angry, I actually think that anger management is kind of the point.
I understand the incomprehensible importance your life has been endowed with, but you are bound to do things when you are angry, regardless of your intent. They happen with or without us. You mention your work, your life, and career. What do you do when you feel angry during your work?
Okay, and I like that we acknowledged how important he is, right? We're keeping and establishing that rapport. We're noticing that he's kind of getting pissy with us. So talking about his incomprehensible importance, we're maintaining that element here while also talking about the influence of the unconscious on our emotions and on our behaviors. So that's good. In fact, like, reconnecting in that sort of way when we notice that we've moved away from one of our clients or that we have harmed rapport in some way is actually quite a good thing to do, and that we seem to have done here. So that's an interesting element.
My colleagues commented on me being angry. That is why I started coming here.
See?
When I become angry, I vocalize this in my speeches. I told you before, I am most frustrated about the Jews controlling the economy. And as I stated on multiple occasions, the final goal of anti-Semitism must be the irrevocable and complete removal of the Jews. I have been saying this since 1919. Haven't you learned anything from me?
Right. I did. The person playing the game noticed all of this and wanted to talk about it. I swear I did. And some of that might be because I know things from the future. Looking at the past, hindsight is always 20/20. But at the same time, even with working with a client, we could have made those connections. And a psychoanalyst is constantly looking for patterns and connections to make. And that was a pattern and connection that we absolutely should have made if we were a good psychoanalyst.
There is no reason to get aggressive, Adolf. I am your friend. You know I am trying to help you, and I already know what the cause of your anger is. But you weren't ready until now. But during the past months, we've built something here, and I feel like it's the right time to share my findings with you. I think you are ready to hear my final diagnosis. Do you want to hear it?
So that aggression we would probably label as transference of transferring. So transference is when a client sort of transfers and starts to treat the therapist as an important person in their life, often treating them as parent. And so that transference might be that he's starting to treat me as his father and experiencing that aggression and that anger and pushing it outwards as well. So I wonder what happens here when we talk about final diagnosis, though. Do I get to pick?
Sorry, Jace. I know you want to help me. Okay, tell me the findings.
Yeah, that wouldn't have happened that quickly. We would have to have a conversation about projection and transference. Okay, we haven't gotten into. I think that Hitler was a sick child, but we haven't talked about that at all. And so I'm not going to use that information here, because if I had gone into this game not really knowing the historical element of that, I wouldn't be leaning towards that at all. I would be selecting the second.
Yes, this is what I've been trying to tell you. They are like a tuberculosis of the human race and need to be eliminated.
Yes, I know. I was repeating what you were trying to tell me.
It is obvious to me that you are equating Jews and Marxists with a disease or a virus for a reason.
And what reason might this be? The information that we don't have in-game.
It all started with the death of your mother.
Oh,
That was the first
okay.
real trauma that happened to you. And even though you rationally acknowledged that the doctor helped your mother, you unconsciously associated her death with him. You unconsciously blamed him, the Jewish doctor, for the biggest pain in your life.
Yeah, I forgot that we had the death of his mother to connect to it. Bad psychoanalyst, Erica, bad.
What are you talking about? I like this doctor, even though he was Jew.
Yes, that is true, but only on a conscious level. The unconscious consists of factors which you cannot control. The absolute majority of your psyche is controlled by your unconscious. I know you don't like to hear this because you like to control everything, but people have almost no control over their lives, you and me included. Only when you come to terms with the unconscious can you start becoming who you really are. That is also why you refer to the Jewish people as a cancer or an infection.
Oh, I don't think he's going to like this at all, but at least now we've got the unconscious and the uncontrollable here.
What are you saying? This is sounding nonsense to me.
It sounded like nonsense to a lot of people. And yeah, we know that he's not going to like this because he wants a sense of control, and it makes him angry to think that he doesn't have control. And to be honest, you would see that, right? Children who experience abuse in childhood live in a completely uncontrollable environment, and uncontrollable environments, you do see a reaction sometimes that as that child grows, you see more and more of a need for control in order to counteract that terrible, uncontrollable environment.
I know it is hard to hear, but it is important that you understand this. You hated your father. He was meant to support you, but instead he beat you when you tried to connect with him. You told me before that you were glad he died. The hate towards him that you carried inside, it became twisted. The war trauma and the art school rejection only fueled it. You equated the Jews and the Marxists with your father. All of that hate was mistakenly redirected. We say projected. You couldn't take the pain he caused you, so you had to find some cause, and you projected it onto Jews and Marxists.
Okay, so finally we're talking about projection as well, and getting into that and getting into those details. But we're doing this in a very didactic way. We're a very monologue-y type way. I have no idea if this sort of thing would be done in psychoanalysis or not. In cognitive behavioral therapy, we often take a Socratic approach where you try to get the person to realize these things themselves. You plant seeds, and you basically ask leading questions to move towards that sort of realization, or you suggest it as a hypothesis rather than saying this is true. I don't know in psychoanalysis if after months of working together you would just state it like this, and if it takes months of working together before you even start to make these sorts of suggestions. I simply don't know.
No, stop. I don't want to hear this.
Of course you don't want to hear this. There again, we have resistance. Can we talk about it?
This is my final diagnosis, Adolf. This is what we've been working on. You equated the cancer in your mother with Jews because you mistakenly associated the Jewish doctor with the cause of your mother's death. That's why you are so strongly anti-Semitic.
He's not going to listen.
This is absolute nonsense. I will not listen to this.
I told you. And to be honest, right, if we think about psychoanalysis, it isn't considered an effective treatment. So it's a distinct possibility we can never heal Hitler because we're using the wrong type of therapy. So we could either end the therapy, or we can continue talking. I don't know what we want to do. Should we talk some more? I'm going to talk some more just because I want to see what happens. Right? There's a very gamey approach to it. But I think him saying that and us being like, well, then fine, I can't treat you, sounds really dismissive.
Another thing is your high disgust sensitivity, which you mentioned a few times before. You are a so-called germaphobe. Your remarks about Jews being a virus, an infection, and Germany being a pristine body infected with Jewish parasites point very clearly to your behavioral immune system.
I don't recall him talking about being high in disgust sensitivity, although again, it does imply that there are sessions that we're not seeing, and so I'm curious about that.
You Hosen Scheisser. You useless fucking psychologist. You Arschgeig. I told you no more. That is it. We are done here, and I will remember you for this.
Oh, I'm gonna get murdered. Yep, everybody's dead. And so we finished our final session, and that was it. And so I do wonder if there is a way to actually heal Hitler there. If you, basically, I wonder if you remember the conversations, if you can see how that goes, and I don't know the answer to that. But I do find this very interesting. I thought that I thought that some of the decisions that we could make, a lot of what we were talking about, though, a lot of what we were saying sounded cognitive behavioral in nature and were things that I didn't know would be done in psychoanalysis. Cognitive behavioral therapy wasn't established until the 1960s, although it was based on the same talking cure that Freud based psychoanalysis on. So it is possible that we would see those things in psychoanalysis as well. Again, I readily admit that I don't know psychoanalysis, but I am interested. I'm going to go through and play this game again, probably not on stream because it's a lot of conversation, but I'll play it again on stream at some point and post another video of it if I find out that there's a way that we can actually heal Hitler, and to talk about what that looked like and why, and if I was able to figure out why it is that was the path, and learn more about psychoanalysis in the process. So I'm going to end the video here, but thank y'all for coming, and I will see you on the flip side.